Hello all you hellions and welcome back. For this week's shower curtain pick, I chose a real heavy hitter and was able to watch it on my favorite streaming service, Shudder. This movie is extremely well known and loved by horror fans of all generations. Directed by Tobe Hooper in 1974, this movie is of course the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And here it is on the curtain. Right there, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is a movie I have seen countless times, and I truly feel that every horror fan should see it at least once. It follows a group of 5 friends that run into a sadistic, cannibalistic family. And, as the title suggests, they have a chainsaw. Let's get into it. This movie was touted as being a true story, which many believed. And although it was very loosely based on Ed Gein, who did use human flesh and bones for various decor and clothing, and he himself was a gravedigger, this movie is in fact fiction. I can, however, see how so many people believed it to be true. I myself fell for the whole Blair Witch Project being true, found footage, all of that. So I get it. I get why people believe this. And the opening of this movie truly does have a documentary feel to it. The opening narration was done by a man by the name of John Larroquette. I might be pronouncing that incorrectly. And apparently John was paid with a marijuana joint. He has also reportedly never seen this movie. The soundtrack you hear in the beginning of this movie and throughout the whole thing are actually sounds that Tobe Hooper felt animals would hear in a slaughterhouse. We hear an announcement on the radio that a local cemetery has been the victim of grave robbing. Then we see some badly decomposed corpses posed like some grisly work of art. People from all over have been coming to this cemetery to ensure their loved ones had not been dug up. And that is what brings our main cast to this town. We have Sally, played by Marilyn Burns, and her brother Franklin, played by Paul A. Partain. They have come to this cemetery to be sure that their grandfather's remains have not been dug up.
My granddaddy's buried here. Can we find out if anything happened to him?
Thankfully, his grave remains untouched. Along for the ride is Sally's boyfriend Jerry, played by Alan Danziger, Pam, played by Terry McMinn, and Pam's boyfriend Kirk, played by William Vale. The group pick up a hitchhiker, played by Edwin Neal, just after they pass a slaughterhouse. Come to find out, the hitchhiker's family used to work at that slaughterhouse, and he himself was the one that did the killing. He really liked his job.
I think we just picked up Dracula.
He then does this.
Oh, come on.
What are you doing here, Sally?
And then this. And gets himself kicked out of the van. The group then stop by a gas station and find out from the old man, played by Jim Sido, again, I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, that the gas station is out of gas. They're not going to be getting a re-up on gas until either that evening or even the following morning. The group asks this old man where the Franklin house can be found. He tells them that he shouldn't be going around people's houses, especially older houses. It could be dangerous, and that they should just wait around for the gas to get there. Franklin tells the old man that this house belonged to his grandpa, and that they would be okay. The group arrive at the old home, and Franklin notices bones in a sack, and then he also notices bones that are hanging above the doorway. With it being such a hot day, Kirk and Pam decide to go down to the watering hole that Franklin had told them about. Before they get there, however, Kirk hears the sound of a generator running, and it comes from the farmhouse next door. He decides that he wants to go over there so that he can talk them into selling him some of the gas that powers this generator. So they go to the house. They try knocking on the front door, and after nobody answers, Kirk decides that he's going to go in. This is the first glimpse we get of Leatherface, played by Gunnar Hansen.
Hello?
He was apparently paid only $800 to play the part of Leatherface, and he says that he spent that money before the film was done. Leatherface hits Kirk over the head with a sledgehammer and his body goes into convulsions, just like the hitchhiker said happens to animals in slaughterhouses. What I think is so effective about this scene is how quickly it happens. You don't really have time to register what's happening, and then all of a sudden Kirk is taken, thrown to the side, door slammed, done. Gives it a feel of authenticity and is absolutely terrifying. After Kirk had been inside this house for a while, Pam decides to go in after him. Instead of finding Kirk, she stumbles into a room full of animal and human remains. These remains are used to make various pieces of furniture. Now, the animal carcasses in this film were 100% real. They acquired these from a local veterinary clinic. And after the filming of the movie, they didn't know what to do to disperse these parts, so they ended up burning them in the backyard of this house. Leatherface catches Pam as she's trying to leave the house, brings her back in, and places her on a meat hook. Throughout this movie, you hear various sounds in the background like pigs squealing. This combined with the sledgehammer, meat hook, butcher block, really gives us an idea that these people are in some form of slaughterhouse, or at least slaughterhouse situation. Now, Jerry goes in search of Kirk and Pam. He goes up on the front porch, knocks on the door, nobody answers, but he notices the towel that belonged to his friends there on the porch. So now he decides to go into the house in search of Kirk and Pam. He finds Pam, and then he finds Leatherface. And boy, that scream. Leatherface has 3 masks that he wears during different times of this movie. The first that we see is his killing mask. This is when he is killing people, either chasing them down, catching them, butchering them. All of this is done in the killing mask. The other 2, I'll tell you about in a minute. Sally and Franklin are getting very worried about their friends. Darkness has come and they are not back. So, because they can't find the van keys, they decide to set out on foot to go look for them. As Sally is pushing Franklin through the woods, Leatherface appears.
Sally, I hear something. Stop! Stop!
Now, in this movie titled The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Franklin is actually the only victim that is killed with a chainsaw. So Gunnar Hansen actually stood over 6 feet tall, but they really wanted him to loom over his victims, so they put him in 3-inch boots. Now, even with these 3-inch boots, he was still faster than Marilyn Burns. Now, when he was chasing her through the woods, trying to not catch up to her, he had to do some random things to keep from catching up with her. And that's why in the background, you see Leatherface giving hell to some branches. Speaking of branches, The actress Marilyn Burns, when she was running from Leatherface through all of the thicket and all of this, she ended up getting injured. A lot of those cuts that you see on her later on in this film are real. She runs to the neighboring farm looking for help and instead finds Grandpa, played by John Dugan. Apparently, it took 5 hours to put the grandpa makeup on John Dugan, and he was really unhappy about this. So he let Tobe Hooper know that he was only going to put it on once. So every scene that he needed to be in, they needed to film back to back. Apparently, this took 31 hours. Sally jumps out the window to get away from Leatherface, and another chase through the woods begins. Sally makes it back to the gas station and runs into the old man. He says he's going to help her, and while he's out getting the truck, she notices the food that he's been preparing, which is hanging up being cooked right now, looks suspiciously like human. So she knows immediately that she's in trouble. The old man comes back in and knocks her out with a broom and takes her back to the house. As the old man is pulling up to the house, we see the hitchhiker again. This is when we find out that the hitchhiker is actually the one who was doing the grave robbing.
Where are you at? I've been out on the road. You damn fool, you almost got caught over a dude. No, they didn't see me. They don't know nothing. I told you to stay away from that graveyard.
That he is the old man's son, and that Leatherface is his brother. And now we see the second mask of Leatherface. This is the old lady mask. I had a hard time finding a picture of this because you don't see it very well in the movie. So I'll try to explain it. It is kind of a wrinkly face, and she has, the mask has gray curly hair that's kind of put up in a bun the way you might see on a grandmother. He tends to wear this mask when he's doing more home type chores. We see it when he's in the kitchen, he's preparing a meal, he was kind of cleaning up, things like that. So when he's feeling more like a homebody, he tends to wear this mask. Sally awakens and see that she is joining the family for dinner. Now, this movie was filmed in the dead of summer in Texas. Conditions were incredibly hot and miserable for the entire cast the entire time they were shooting. During the day, temperatures would get up to 110 and hotter. And in this house, again, all of the carcasses and any kind of meat product that you saw was real. So they're in this really hot house in the middle of Texas, middle of summer. That house started to stink. So during the time that they were filming this dinner scene, it was actually daytime outside. So they had to put up blackout curtains to make it appear like it was nighttime. These blackout curtains made it even hotter inside this house, raising to temperatures of 120 and hotter. The cast was miserable and it stank. All of this caused Gunnar, in his own words, to go a little crazy. The scene where he has to cut Sally's finger to feed the blood to his grandpa, they had to shoot over and over because the tube that they were using that was going to shoot out the blood kept getting clogged. Finally, because Gunnar Hansen wanted to be done, he actually cut Marilyn Burns' finger for real. I would also like to point out the rag that we see in Sally's mouth was actually used to wipe off some meat and the juices from a table. That rag apparently tasted nasty. We now see the third Leatherface mask. This one is the Pretty Woman. He wears this on fancy occasions, like if you want to do yourself up nice to go out for a fancy dinner. We now find out that the old man is just a cook. He's never been the one to do the killing. He doesn't like the idea of torturing your food before you eat it.
Oh, leave the torture, the poor. You just shut up. Remember, you're just a cook, and me and him will handle this. Get on with it. I won't hear this.
The family have decided to let Grandpa be the killer of Sally. Apparently, he was the best killer in the family at one point, but he's not what he used to be. After several attempts to hit Sally in the head with a hammer, she gets away and jumps out a window. For this scene, they used a stunt double, but they cut in a clip of Sally when she lands. Now, when she landed, the actress Marilyn Burns actually hurt herself. This poor woman is getting a lot of knocks during this movie. The hitchhiker and Leatherface take off after Sally, Leatherface still wearing his Pretty Woman mask. The hitchhiker catches up to Sally and starts slashing her back with a razor blade and gets himself run over by a semi-truck. Sally and the trucker take off running on foot. Before the trucker left his truck, however, he grabbed a large wrench. As he was running from Leatherface, he turned around, throwing it and hitting him in the head, causing him to fall. This was the final scene filmed for this movie. Now, the scream you hear Leatherface give off was made from true pain. The way that they did this scene was they had a metal plate, some meat, and a blood bag. So when he fell and you see the chainsaw, which by the way is a very real chainsaw, hit his leg, what happened was the metal from that chainsaw hitting that metal plate caused it to heat up and legitimately burn Gunnar Hansen. Sally jumps into the back of another truck that was driving by, leaving the other truck driver on his own, by the way, and they drive off to safety. We now see the most iconic scene of this movie. So Tobe Hooper told Gunnar Hansen that he needed to look frustrated, angry, like a child would, that his prey got away. So Gunnar, deciding that jumping up and down, that kind of thing, would look just too childish for a killer such as Leatherface, and he is the one who decided to do that dance with a chainsaw. Now, while being filmed, Tobe Hooper actually had to jump out of the way of this chainsaw in fear of getting hit, because once again, this was a real chainsaw. And this brought Gunnar Hansen some joy that he got to scare the shit out of the director because of everything that director put this cast through during the filming of this movie. Tobe Hooper tried very hard to get this movie a PG rating. That's why you don't see any nudity, there's hardly any profanity, and not much blood. Most of the killing in this movie was done off screen, but all of this had the opposite effect of what he was going for. The original version of this movie actually got an X rating, and then with a bunch of cuts, he was finally able to bring this down to an R rating, which he accepted and released the movie. Tobe Hooper actually got the idea for this movie while he was Christmas shopping. He was in the hardware aisle and he was surrounded by all of these holiday shoppers, and he was starting to think in his head what would be the best way that he could get out of here quickly, and then he spotted a chainsaw. Doesn't sound very PG. Gunnar Hansen originally turned down the part of Leatherface due to the brutality of this character. He was later talked into it by his friend Marilyn Burns. Due to the film's very low budget, they were only able to afford to buy one shirt for Gunnar Hansen to wear. This shirt had to be dyed, which meant that it could not be washed. So for the 4 weeks that it took to film this movie, he had to wear the same shirt. So again, Texas, really hot, sweltering conditions, and he was in this same shirt. So the rest of the cast, they actually stayed away from him as much as possible and absolutely refused to eat around him because of the stench. Gunnar Hansen did not like Paul Partain at all during the making of this movie. A couple years later, they met again, and come to find out, Partain was just a method actor, so he wanted to stay in his character throughout the entirety of filming. So they became fast friends, and they remained close friends until Partain sadly passed away. Texas state troopers shook the hand of Edwin Neal after the movie's release, stating that the crime in their state had gone down by 18% because nobody wanted to pick up hitchhikers anymore.
I'm afraid to call a cop. That's the last goddamn hitchhiker I ever...
Guillermo del Toro became a vegetarian after seeing this movie. Entertainment Weekly touted this movie as being the second scariest ever made, losing out only to The Exorcist. All right, guys, this is really cool. So the gas station that was used in this movie was left abandoned for years and years, becoming dilapidated, almost falling down, all of that stuff. Until 2016, when a businessman by the name of Roy Rose bought it, together with Ari Lehman, who was the very first person to play Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th movies. Together they fixed it up, and they turned it into a Texas Chainsaw Massacre themed campground, complete with 4 cabins. The gas station is filled with film memorabilia and souvenirs. It's also one of the locations of the Cult Classic Convention held every September. An awesome trophy depicting a skull on top of a chainsaw is awarded to the person who wins Best Costume. All of this information and more can be found on their Facebook page titled simply The Gas Station. So there you have it. I truly hope I did this movie justice. I could go on and on for hours about this movie, and I might make another video about this after I drag my poor husband to one of these conventions. Love you, baby. The filming, lighting, and sound effects were done perfectly. You really got a feel of the terror all of these friends were going through. From the stress and worry of realizing that some of your group have gone missing, to the absolute horror of being chased through the woods with a man wielding, once again, a very real chainsaw. That, grouped with the amazing acting from the entire cast, get this movie obviously a well-deserved 5 coffins. Any horror fans out there that have not yet seen this movie, you are doing yourself a serious disservice. Get out there right now and watch this movie. Right now! And this concludes our video. Great big thank you to all of you out there who support this channel. Whether you be a repeat viewer who keeps coming back for more, or a first-time viewer, thank you. See you next time.